Okay. We'll start to get attendees coming in. Welcome. Welcome everyone. We're just waiting for people to attend, to get signed in. Good morning, everyone. Okay. Good morning, Alexis. Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Julie and Angela from Huon Council. Okay, well, we might get started and we'll have some more people joining us as we go. So welcome everyone. I'm Sue Leach and I'm the CEO of CODA Tasmania. CODA is an organisation that has a very strong interest in older people of Tasmania, and we're here to support them and to celebrate them. I would like to start this morning by taking this opportunity to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners of Lutruwita, Tasmania. We acknowledge their continuing connection to and the custodianship of the land, seas, airs and waterways, and commit ourselves to the ongoing journey of reconciliation. We honour elders past, present and emerging. So good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us in our webinar today about the Tasmanian Liveable Communities Toolkit launch and webinar. I'm going to just give you a little bit of information before we get going. As way of introduction, we have about half the Tasmanian councils represented in the attendee list, which is great, and we really appreciate the time that people have given to attend, especially in this current circumstances where we're very busy due to the current situation. The webinar will include the launch of the Liveable Communities Toolkit, and this will be briefly explained by our project officer in this area, Ros Herbert. We're then going to hear some presentations about what's happening in this space from Legat, West Coast Council, Clarence City Council, Huon Valley Council and Central Coast Council. So welcome to all the presenters from there. This is really about the importance of keeping our community connected and included, and this has been highlighted significantly during COVID-19. And the Liveable Communities provide a powerful framework to build on this and make sure that it continues to happen. If ever we needed this webinar, it's now. Just to let you know that if you're attending, the presenters won't be able to see or hear you, but we know that you are there, and there's opportunity to chat through the chat function. We'll be taking questions and answers through the Q&A panel. If you hover over the bottom bar, you will see that function called Q&A, and you can post questions in there. The webinar will be recorded for viewing afterwards. And there'll be a minute or two at the end of each of the presentations for Q&A. So write them in the Q&A and not in the chat, because we'll be keeping an eye on Q&A for those questions. If we don't have time to address all your questions, please still post them, because we're going to get our panelists to respond by email later if we don't have time to get to them during the morning. If you would like more information about the Liveable Communities today or today's webinar, please get in touch with Coda Taz and we can do that. And look, we're really pleased to say that the Liveable Communities Toolkit has been funded by the Tasmanian Government's Strong Liveable Communities, Tasmania's Active Ageing Plan, which is currently in place. I'd like to acknowledge some VIPs who's responded for today. So we have the Honourable Sue Hickey MP, Speaker of the Tasmanian House of Assembly, Alison Standen MP, Shadow Minister for Housing, Climate Change, Environment, Parks and Heritage, the Honourable Mike Gaffney MLC, Independent Member for Mersey, the Honourable Rob Valentine, MLC, Independent Member for Hobart, Mary Knowles, OAM, Mayor of the Northern Midlands Council, Councillor Christine Campbell from the Huon Valley Council, Councillor Sama Metzke from Latrobe Valley Council, Latrobe Council, my apologies, Carmen Ransley, CEO of AXA, Danielle Goss, representing the Honourable Rebecca White MP, Leader of the Opposition. And we've also got some apologies I'll quickly run through. The Honourable Peter Gutwin MP, Premier of Tasmania, Honourable Guy Barminette MP, Honourable Elise Archer MP, Honourable Sarah Courtney MP, Honourable Gavin Pearce MP, Senator Jonathan Duniam, Senator Wendy Askew, Honourable Rebecca White MP, Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Julie Collins MP, Cassie O'Connor MP, Leader of the Tasmanian Greens, the Honourable Josh Willey MLC, Honourable Sarah Lovell MLC, Honourable Weg Meb MLC, the Honourable Rosemary Armitage MLC, and Christine Holmdale, Mayor of West Tamar Council. So I would now like to pass over to our Minister, the Honourable General Rubini Rockcliffe MP, who's Deputy Premier, Minister for Disability Services and Community Development. So I pass over to the Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Sue. I'm assuming everyone can hear me. I get a few nods there. That's good. I've lost my face on the screen though. So if anyone can, am I right to go, Sue? I can't hear you at the moment. I'll start my video. How's that? Is that better?
Excellent.
Yes, that's great. And Deb, can you spotlight?
What was that spotlight? There you go.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Sue. I think the words "you're on mute" or "please start your video" is going to be the 2020 phrase, I think, for all of us. But thank you, and thanks very much for inviting me today to, of course, launch the toolkit. Can I also thank you, Sue, for acknowledging our traditional owners of the land of which we all are now sitting or standing, and I pay my respects to Tasmania's First People and their elders past, present and emerging. Can I acknowledge, of course, my parliamentary colleagues that are also online, Sue, Alison, Mike and Rob. I think we've got Daniel representing the Leader of the Opposition, Rebecca White, Mary Knowles as well, Mayor Knowles, sorry, and all councillors that are on board as well, and all the list that you read out, Sue, thank you very much, but also your COTA team as well. And thank you very much for our dialogue, interactions over the course of the last number of months since I've had the pleasure of holding this portfolio. And it's not the first time that we've launched a program or a partnership together, Sue, so that's terrific. Today I'm of course launching the updated Liveable Communities Toolkit developed by the Council of Ageing Tasmania, of course, which we all refer to as COTA. It's my great pleasure to do so. And I hope everyone has looked after yourselves and each other over the course of the last number of months. It's been unprecedented times, and I particularly thank all the people on today that have supported their fellow community members. I know it's been very difficult, and I recognise, Sue, that the people that you represent and advocate for more vulnerable members of our community due to the impact of COVID-19, and I respect the way that you've been a very strong advocate in that space as well. But there are many opportunities, I suppose, of the times we now live in, and most of us have come up to speed most certainly with the technology and the opportunity of technology, and so this is a great example of it today. It's also our health services have adapted as well to these times, and the increased use of telehealth could only be a good thing through this. And so I know these have been very challenging times and difficult for many, but we must look at all the opportunities that present ourselves as well, and policymakers in terms of the future. So I understand that today's launch builds on the work that COTA undertook a number of years ago to build a community of practice around the World Health Organization Global Friendly Cities and Communities Framework. And the framework includes, of course, as you'd be well aware, domains aimed at creating age-friendly cities and communities to help cities and communities see themselves from the perspective of older people, which of course COTA has a major role in. So COTA has already developed and produced an excellent series of toolkit resources around a number of these domains, and a global network of age-friendly cities and communities developed. And it's great to see that several Tasmanian local government councils are part of this network today, and I acknowledge you as well again, and thank you. Livability, as you would all appreciate, is very important to us all. We all might have different ideas about what makes a place livable, but there are a number of common characteristics found in most definitions, and a livable neighbourhood is one which is easy and comfortable, of course, to carry out our daily life and routine for a range of different people. This essentially means, of course, ensuring quality development which is well integrated into the local area and accompanied by infrastructure and services needed to support that. Well, our major cities, of course, are undergoing an urban transformation to higher density, and this is particularly, of course, relevant to Australia's largest cities, which face, of course, as we all know, significant infrastructure pressures. Our smaller cities, such as Hobart, face different challenges in terms of retaining population growth and building local industries as well, and we're all accustomed to that. Population is ageing. It's a global phenomenon, and Tasmania, of course, is leading Australia in this trend. Of all Australian states and territories, Tasmania has the fastest ageing population, and Sue, you're well aware of all that, which makes it all the more important that COTA is here and your advocacy. Almost 180,000 Tasmanians, so that's almost a third of the population, are expected to be over 65 by 2060. And as COTA points out in its Embracing the Future report, a report that was released last year, Tasmania should embrace its ageing population, but it also, very importantly, needs to plan for it. Policymakers on the state and federal and local levels have very important roles to play in designing and maintaining, and at times redeveloping and retrofitting communities to be active places where residents of all ages, including older residents, can fully participate in life. And certainly we recognise that around this table, and with the communication we've had, of course, with COTA, that we also have a very key role to play in supporting Tasmanians as they age. I'm pleased the Tasmanian government is able to provide some support, Sue, to you and your team at COTA to ensure that older Tasmanians stay empowered, connected and informed during also these unprecedented and very difficult times, as we know. In conclusion, can I say that all our technological advances, facilities, housing, road design, walkability, transportation and supportive services all affect whether and for how long people can remain in the community as they age. So livable, age-friendly communities make for happier, healthier residents of every age and through all life stages. And that's very important to me. And just with my community development hat on as I stand here today, but also, of course, I wear a number of other hats, including mental health and wellbeing, which, of course, is very relevant to the subject that we're talking about today. So the suite of combined resources that comprise the toolkit on livable communities has been expertly drafted in a way that clearly communicates to the reader. And of course, whether it be a local council or a person with a passion for creating a livable community, on what we can do collectively to bring about cities, our towns, our communities, whose residents all agree that it is a great place to live. So thank you very much, Sue, for the opportunity to launch the updated toolkit. I commend you and your team at COTA on its work in developing the 2020 toolkit. I have much pleasure in launching it today. And I have much pleasure also acknowledging that Seniors Week this week, if I just finish off here, coming up between the 12th and the 18th of October. Now, just to make sure that everyone's aware that Metro Tasmania will be offering free transport to seniors. To date, also more than 50 organisations have registered to hold face-to-face events compliant, of course, with social distancing rules, and a diverse range of online events will also be on offer as well. So we look forward to that Seniors Week, Sue. So thanks very much for inviting me firstly to launch the toolkit today. It's my great pleasure to do so. Thanks for our interactions we've had in recent months. I really very much appreciate that. And of course that will continue. I am available till around 10:30 to keep listening to the discussion. So I look forward to that. And of course, we'll chat about the rest of the outcome of the rest of the meeting that I won't be in attendance for, Sue, but thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words, and I wish everyone the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you. And look, at COTA, we're very excited to hear that free travel is back for Seniors Week. That's a wonderful outcome and very pleasing. We've actually got 50 events that will be held in Seniors Week simultaneously simulcast. So we've got more than 50 events. We're over the 100 events for Seniors Week, which is very admirable given the conditions that we're in at the moment. But it's great that 50 of those will be simulcast for people if they can't actually be present as well. It's now my great pleasure to introduce a really valuable team member at COTA Tasmania, Rosalind Herbert, or Ros as we know her, and she's been responsible for the extensive research and investigation, gathering information from across the world and Australia that has gone into the development of the toolkit. So now over to Ros.
Thanks, Sue. And thank you, Minister, as well, for launching the toolkit today. So here I am. Hello. I will now share my screen and just show you and go through the presentation I've got. So hopefully this all works. Oh, here we go. There we are. Lovely. All right then. Well, thank you everyone as well for coming along today, particularly given how busy everyone is. I'm going to briefly go over the toolkit and what it includes and what livable communities are and some of COTA's ideas around this space. I'm an active ageing project officer, and feel free to contact me at all if you do want more information about livable communities. So the toolkit is mainly to provide some information, ideas and resources to councils and communities to continue to build on the fantastic work that we know is already happening around Tasmania. So we're not trying to tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing. You guys are on the ground, you know what's happening in your area, but we're hoping that particularly as we come out of COVID-19, we continue to build all the lovely work that's been done in creating community connections that's occurred through COVID-19. And there are 8 documents in the toolkit, and I'll go through very briefly what these are, and you can access the toolkit via our website. And this presentation will be available to everyone as well. So if you need these links, then you can find them when we send them out. So as the Minister has already talked a little bit about, a livable community is also known as an age-friendly community. So it's a place where people of all ages, backgrounds and circumstances can live safely, respectfully and healthily in their own communities. And we do focus on older Tasmanians when we talk about livable communities. We know that as we age, our cognitive and physical abilities will change, and as will our social networks. And unfortunately, we do tend to live in a slightly ageist society. We all have unconscious biases towards age, myself included, and we don't have to look very far to see that becoming older isn't always shown in a particularly positive light. So it is important that we do look after our older Tasmanians and make sure that they're supported to age well. But of course, what benefits older Tasmanians will benefit the whole community. So anyone of any age can experience changes in physical and cognitive abilities, life transitions. Instead of maybe manoeuvring a walker, they're manoeuvring a pram. So it really does benefit everyone adopting livable community practices or principles. And when we talk about livable communities, we're really talking about choice and opportunity. And this relates back to the active ageing concepts that COTA holds. We see active ageing, a lot of people talk about active ageing as though it's physical activity, but really it's much wider than that. And we have the view that active ageing is actually more about being an active participant in how you live your life. So having the choice, being able to make choices, being respected for those choices, but also having the opportunities to act out those choices. And this is where councils and communities can really come together to make sure that activities and services are actually available within communities, but that they're also accessible, not just, so in the way that people can access them. So transport from their home to the service and business, that they can physically access that premises, and that they're also feeling included when they enter that activity or service. So they feel that they are respected for being there as well. So there are 8 domains in livability, and I'm just going to briefly go through these. These were developed by AARP if you'd like a little bit more information about them, but there is some info in the toolkit as well. I won't go into these in detail, but I guess some things that I would like to just point out is the importance of intergenerational connection. So making sure that we're bringing younger and older and everyone in between together so that we can actually challenge ageism and make sure that there is a respect being built up in the community. I guess through COVID-19, there has been some pretty negative attitudes towards older people, and it's important that we do make sure that our communities are connected, that they are respectful of everyone. And that they are able to learn skills and ideas from people of all different ages, and it goes both ways. Older people can learn from younger people just as much as younger people can learn from older people. But it also extends into services and businesses as well, and making sure that every aspect of our community is challenging ageism. Now, it is particularly important in Tasmania that we are planning for an ageing population. As the Minister said, we do have the oldest population in Tasmania, and it is ageing the fastest of any state and territory. So from 2006 to 2016, the proportion of Tasmanians aged over 65 increased by 4.5%. And this is expected to increase to about 25% by 2030, so 1 in 4 Tasmanians, and up to 30% by 2060. And when we talk about an ageing population, it can also often be quite negative, but the problem isn't so much with the ageing population as it is with lack of planning. So if we are planning for an ageing population, we're making sure that people can remain connected as they get older, that they can remain independent, they can remain physically and mentally healthy, then it's going to make things much easier, and we can actually begin to use the opportunities that an ageing population provides us and actually begin to see those opportunities and take advantage of them. And the populations are ageing across Tasmania in every LGA. We've got this data, as mentioned before, in our Embracing the Future report. There are 2 parts to this report. The first one is this broad demographic data, but our second report includes information about the health, relationships, cultural diversity, income, employment, and housing of older Tasmanians. And this can help, where we have been able to, we've gone down to LGA level in that report. So if you do want a little bit more of an idea generally about the characteristics of older people within your council area, it might be worth going along and having a bit of a look at those reports. They're on our website as well. And that data can be really handy when you do start developing a livable community. In the toolkit, we do have these 5 steps that you can go through just when planning a strategy around this area. The key point though is to engage community right from the start, right through the process, and continuing on afterwards. I'm sure a lot of us are aware of great ideas and projects that have fallen down because community hasn't been engaged, and there's been pushback from the community because of that lack of engagement, no matter how great the idea is and how many people it can benefit. So it is important that we make sure we are connecting with the community right from the start, not only to make sure that you've got that support on board, but also to make sure that you are actually addressing the issues that are in the community and the needs and wants of people. So again, it's right from the planning, keeping consulting as you're planning that strategy, and then afterwards as well. And there are a couple of documents in the toolkit to provide a few ideas about how to do this, particularly with older Tasmanians. And again, it's just one thing that's quite important is making sure we're not making assumptions about older Tasmanians. As I mentioned before, we do tend to have some biases towards older Tasmanians, and we may assume that certain things may be important to them. But we do need to make sure that we're open to new ideas, and that extends to any group within our community as well. There are a couple of documents as well that help provide a few ideas about the ways to implement livability. The key one I'd just really like to raise is about language. And again, it comes back to the ageism issue. Just being really careful about how we talk about older Tasmanians. And, you know, this challenging ageism really does start at the top. It starts with leadership and with governments and councils. So making sure that the language used that we use is really inclusive in our policies, our strategies, in how we talk, making sure that every step along the way doesn't make assumptions about different groups of people or is negative about older Tasmanians. So, and finally, there are also some resources in the toolkit. So there are some other livable community guides and examples, and also some great work happening all across Australia that are really good examples of livable communities. And a checklist. So the checklist allows you to identify not only where improvements are needed in this space, but also where your strengths are, because we know that there are heaps of things being done really well across Tasmania, and it is important that you acknowledge those strengths and celebrate them. But if you do find that there are improvements that could probably be made in some domains that we talked about before, those 8 livability domains, there's also some resources under each of those domains for you to find a little bit more information and give some ideas about ways that you can address those. So just briefly, I also want to talk about some walkability work that COTA's been doing that links quite well with livability. So we've developed quite a comprehensive walkability audit, which is about connected communities. So making sure that people can walk around their community, but also between communities, and not just within a business area or a village, but being able to actually walk from your house to where you want to go. So really good connections. And this is mainly for community members to fill in and to send to council, so that the council gets ideas about what people are wanting and what people need in their community where they're seeing challenges. And we've also got a shorter version. So there's a little postcard like this. This can be sent back to council. It's got some questions on the back, but it can be sent back just with a standard stamp, even though it looks a little bit bigger than a standard postcard. And again, that's just a really good way to engage your community, make sure that you're hearing their voices and make them feel heard. And if you do want more information about livable communities, please don't hesitate to contact COTA. We really would like to engage councils and communities in this space. So if you do want us to talk to councillors or aldermen, please feel free to contact us. We can also pull out some of that data we have from Embracing the Future that is more applicable to your LGA area. And yeah, really happy to do that as well and provide more information. But also if you are looking to connect with older Tasmanians in your community and you might need a few ideas about how to do that, we can always try to help you out there. Providing feedback on grant applications or support letters, projects, anything like that is, please feel free to send that through. And we are always really interested to hear what is happening in this space across Tasmania and happy to promote that as well. And we have a community activities and events page on our website. This is a space where community groups and councils and anyone who holds activities or events for the community can go up. It's free promotion. They're listed by region as well and activity type. So it's quite accessible. There are over 900 activities now on the community activities page. And people can also call us up if they don't have the internet, and we can print out pages and information and send that to people. So if you'd like to check that out, that again is on our website. And yeah, just like to thank everyone. That was a bit of a crash course through everything, but please feel free to contact us, contact me if you'd like more information about anything. And if you have any feedback about the toolkits as well, really happy to hear about that. So thanks everyone, and I am looking forward to hearing from everyone else today.
Thanks, Roz. That's wonderful. Okay, we're lucky to be joined today by Lyndon Leopard from LGAP, and he's going to talk about local government's role in livability and community health and wellbeing. So welcome, Lyndon.
You might need to unmute, Lyndon.
Yes. We all right? Thank you. Is my screen up for everybody yet? Okay, thank you. Well, congratulations, Roz, on the toolkit. going to connect with some of your comments in a way that's pretty direct, but entirely accidental. Some of it is deliberate. My role at Legat is to manage a health and wellbeing project funded by the Department of Health, and I'm very excited about working with council officers, and I'll make some more comments about the quality of council officers as I speak. My background is in education and organisational culture, and I have to say that I haven't met a greater number of adaptive, energetic, and community-focused people than I have in working with people in local councils. The other comment I'd make is that I am an older Tasmanian, and I want to just make the point that I applied for this job last year in March, and Legat gave me an opportunity to contribute, and I'm very grateful to them for that. So last March, at the age of 67, I got back into the full-time workforce. So it's a very exciting time for me, and particularly relevant to be contributing to CODA's work. I have three broad threads of thought I want to explore briefly today, and they're on the screen. I won't read each of them separately, but I want to link some information about health and wellbeing in Tasmania as it particularly relates to local councils, link that a bit to the CODA toolkit, and talk about the some of the circumstances that influence how councils operate in the health and wellbeing programs territory. I also want to acknowledge the context of the toolkit, and one of those is that its focus on influencing councils as part of a wider connected system, and I think that's done very constructively. I just want to make the point, and not that it's being not covered in the toolkit, but councils are part of a much wider connected system, and it's great to focus on councils, but I'll talk about how councils rely on others as we go through. The other point I want to just mention as context is the public policy context, and that we now have the Tasmania statement, working together for the health and wellbeing of Tasmanians. That's people in Tasmania have been working on this area of health in all policies for a long time, and the current government has, in fact, the page is signed by Minister Rockcliffe himself, and it's a government commitment to working together for health and wellbeing of all Tasmanians. So that's a very significant context for this work as well. I want to start by making a couple of points about local councils. You'll see from the diagram there that the dark red are council areas. That's how this map is identified. And those council areas have the biggest percentage of populations over 65. Now, the point I want to make about that is that they are all small rural regional councils with small rate bases, with discrete, small, spread out communities. And this has considerable implications when we think broadly about how we're supporting people to age in place, or whatever term is appropriate. That there is a natural focus to focus on where the density of population is, but there's some unique and particular challenges when we consider Tasmania, that our population is very spread out, and I'll bring up a slide later on that makes the point that the majority of our population lives outside city centres. The point about these small council areas, though, is that they, like every part of Tasmania, but I'm going to make a bit of a plug for the smaller ones because I'm just in love with all of them, is that they have a very rich history of looking after each other. There's this concept of capacity building that has a bit of a connotation about it, that the Salamanca experts, if you will, I'm stereotyping for the sake of humour, I hope you appreciate. The Salamanca experts work out how things should be done and then send it out by pigeon or stagecoach to the smaller outposts, so that while those people can wait and find out how they should be living their lives. And of course, it's not like that, and we know it's not. But the thing that struck me in my 18 months in the job is that although I spent a lot of time teaching in small country towns, and perhaps I was too young to appreciate this, the cultural strength and experience that all those communities, particularly the ageing members of the communities, have to bring to solving problems in real and effective ways that work in their communities, has to be seen as a strength and a resource that's got to be used in any planning. And I think the CODA plan does suggest that. That map's very interesting, and it's the reference is there for you to follow up if you wish. I want to also announce, and this is the accidental connection to something Roz has got in the kit, is that the University of Tasmania and Legat spoke some months about the need to focus on walkability in rural areas, and the wonderful Verity Clearland and several other people worked with us and took the lead, I must say, in the final application, but have been awarded over $500,000 to assess and improve walkability in Tasmania's regional and rural communities. So this is very exciting. And the particular thing I want to point out is the phrase in the third paragraph in blue. A deliberate part of this study is to focus on designing and running the research in partnership with local organisations and community members. So this is a fantastic opportunity for people in all Tasmanian communities, but this focus is on rural and regional communities to be actively involved in conducting the research and exploring and collecting the data. I think we're going to see some fantastic developments from that. And CODA already has a bit of a track record by the work that you did in distributing methodologies and ways that people can do analysis in their own community. So that's wonderful. Councils are sometimes termed as placemakers, and just in this, I just want to make a few brief comments about how some of the factors that involve that are involved when people want to work with councils as partners, and I use the word advisedly rather than as people you ring up to complain to go and fix something. I've talked earlier about ageing in some Tasmanian local areas. There are councils that have the greatest percentage of folks over 65. So a key question for working on livability is what does livability look like and feel like for them in those municipalities and areas, because that varies considerably across the state for cultural, geographic and economic reasons. So even a few sizes don't fit all. It's very much a unique response need. The other thing is to spend some time understanding councils. I'm going to hear some superb examples from reps from councils today, and I'm looking forward to that. The focus in my work is with council staff rather than elected reps, and so that's why I'm concentrating on the council staff. And they are an enormous resource who work often behind the scenes, but the people they work with know who they are. And it's my view as an outsider, they don't get enough recognition for the quality of the work they do. And I think they are an underappreciated resource, sometimes within their councils and certainly in the broader context of public policy. A point to make about councils is that though in the Local Government Act, they're responsible for health, safety, and welfare of the community, and that's a quote, there are no regulations regarding the work they do or required to do, And the point is that because of that, in part, they're underfunded. So the expectation could exceed capacity. I'm running out of time, but what councils need, because they have a low rate base, is they rely very much on authentic long-term partnerships and shared ownership. Councils don't personally have the resources to help fix the problems. I've listed there some of the characteristics of the COTA's principles that align very much with the way that effective change takes place. And I know that's not a coincidence, and I want to acknowledge Ros and Dakota that you've identified characteristics essential to long-term success if we're going to improve health and wellbeing outcomes. The final slide is an extract from the State of Public Health report in Tasmania for 2018 and identifies the particular characteristics of what a healthier Tasmanian population will look like. And I haven't included them all there, but I have included the ones that rely very much on council engagement. My final point is that council's willingness to engage is not always matched by their capacity to do so because of the resources they have. I don't just mean money, I also mean the resources of people who are prepared to not just require things to be changed, but to contribute actively to that. And I think your kit goes very, very clearly represents this idea of local community members being participating resources, just not recipients and consumers. So thanks very much to the opportunity to contribute. Sue?
Thanks. Thanks very much, Lyndon. That's great. And very timely, I think, that we have those conversations about health and wellbeing given the current environment. Look, we're now going to pass over to Gary Reeve, and he's going to talk to us about developing a livable community strategy and committee. And Gary is from the West Coast Council. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks, Sue. Does this automatically pull out, or do I have to do something?
We'll pop on Spotlight.
Lovely job. Yeah, so my name's Gary Reeve. I'm the Community Development Officer for West Coast Council. Just some background. Like Lyndon, most of my adult life has been spent in education, particularly in enterprise and learning, and working with disenfranchised groups of people, remote here and on the mainland. And 12 months ago this week, I moved to the West Coast to take up this job. So I'm probably a bit of a newbie, and I bow to your combined wisdom. This presentation will be more of a conversation. I do have available documentation of our 2025 community plan and also the KPMG Liveable, better read it properly, the KPMG West Coast Liveable Community Strategy. If anyone wants those, I can pass those on. So let's hop in. So West Coast Council's Liveable Community Strategy arose out of the work and the research done around the West Coast Community Plan 2025. That in itself was a first. It was the first 10-year strategic plan that West Coast had taken on in quite some time. KPMG were engaged to do that strategy, and it's approximately 123, 124 pages. And from that consultation and from the plan, several key priorities were identified relating to older population, and they were as follows. Firstly, an improvement in the depth and breadth of healthcare services available in the region, dentists, podiatrists, those sorts of things. Secondly, increasing the availability of aged care and respite facilities, servicing and services, because there's an increasing demand. Thirdly, there needed to be an improvement in public transport options, including disability and medical transport. Fourthly, activating a healthy lifestyle culture, and council had already started to some degree with this by looking at MTBs, getting out, get moving, increasing access to council-owned gyms. I've never actually lived in a municipality where the council owns the gyms, and at the end of, I think by the end of next year, each town will have access to a circuit-based gym at really cheap rates, like seriously cheap rates. So finally, there was the fifth strategy, the fifth thing they looked at, which was better engagement and/or coordinated partnerships with agencies, industry partners, and the community to improve resident access in a more holistic range of services and support. And out of this so far, what's actually happened is we've developed an MTB strategy with federal funding for approximately 50 kilometres of tracks, and that already, even though it's a long way from being finalised and opened, is increasing the excitement around physical activity here down on the West Coast. We're seeing a lot more people getting out locally and a lot more visitors coming down and encouraging and building that culture of not sitting home on the couch because it's cold, but getting out and having a bit of a go at doing some sort of physical activity. Also, we have instigated a intertown transport trial with state growth funding of $100,000. That will run over, or will run over the 12 months of this year. COVID hasn't been particularly helpful in that regard. So we're looking to maybe extend that a little bit further out. And whether or not the numbers stack up, it may well be one of those services that council provides for the greater good rather than having a good business plan and making money out of it as such. But that's in effect happening at the moment. And then the area that I'm particularly involved in as Secretariat is the Liveable Community Subcommittee of Council. And this has been a real eye-opener for me. When I first came back to Tassie from the Territory, one of the first visits I had for training was to CODA in Launceston. And I got to admit, I thought I knew a fair bit about stuff to do with old people. I knew nothing. In fact, I sat there 10 minutes in, I think my jaw pretty well much was stuck on the floor as all of these people were telling me all these different things, services to be accessed, age plans. Just, I had no idea. And I came back to council with Dirk, who's our special projects manager, who'd been working in that space. And he quickly brought me up to speed on just what it meant to be to have a livable community. And from that conversation, from the work done in the 2020 plan, we went about creating a livable community subcommittee over a 6-month period. One of our councillors, Kerry Graham, is the chair, and we engaged a consultant from Launceston to come and work with a bunch of people on the weekend to look at what the issues were as the community saw them, to pull apart the Community Plan 2025, to determine the structure of our committee, whether it would simply be advocacy or something with a bit more teeth to it. And over the course of that time, we came to the conclusion that we needed a dynamic, predominantly locally led committee so that we could look at strategies and answers that would be place-based and particular to the West Coast. We're never going to have the numbers to have like a full-blown aged care system as one thing, but we could possibly, with some smart work, some lateral thinking and playing around with the system a bit, create a multi-service faceted structure, if you like, or unit or place that has a combination of standard medical services, allied services, some respite care facility, you know, on a smaller scale, but particular and suited to the West Coast. And that's one of the things that community is looking at the moment. Another thing that it's looking at is a West Coast priority card. People tend to forget that we don't have a lot of the services that the rest of you guys take for granted. So for us to get a dentist or a podiatrist or a massage, it's a 2.5 hour drive out to the coast, then the service, and then 2.5 hour drive back in. some of our people quite often don't get appointments until late in the day. So travelling back to the West Coast in winter overnight, not a good option. So we're looking to try and work with some providers that takes into account that distance factor and allows those members from the West Coast who need those services, particularly our older people, to be cared for at an earlier time than a later time, and thus removing one of the stresses of travelling back in. Let's think what else. So that committee has identified that whatever we do, it needs to be grounded in the idea of being based around a place-based answer, particularly for here. A holistic, integrated approach is of more value than a one-off or a one-centred approach. And because of that economy of scale, as we talked about before, then we needed to look at innovative ways to connect services so that we got the most bang for buck, I guess you would say. Just an example of that, out of conversations with the committee and also with some of our community-based organisations, in this case, Rosebery Development Association, they're looking at taking over one of the council pools and restructuring and repurposing that space to become a hydrotherapy and allied services centre. We have a lot of people, particularly older ones again, who go out to the coast to use float tanks, hydrotherapy, water aerobics to help injuries or health conditions. And often those costs are anywhere from $180 to $320 each time. This group are looking at working with a facility that can no longer function as a pool, but with some smart investment, uses tied in with people who are existingly coming down to the West Coast or who our people go out to see, creating a centre here that would make access to those sorts of facilities a lot easier for our people. And that's actually receiving really good feedback. So that's the most of it, what we're up to. Like I said, this is more conversational than presentational. So if you want some of those other documents, happy to send them through. Any questions, fire away and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. That sounds like you've got some really exciting initiatives going on in the West Coast. I was around there a couple of weekends ago and we had absolutely wonderful weather, but I do take your point about the connection between the towns on the West Coast. It'll be a really important strategy, and we're going to watch with interest. CODA's really excited to say that we've just appointed someone in the aged care system navigator space that can service the Northwest Coast and the West Coast. So Heather's looking forward to being able to get down and visit you on the West Coast, Gary.
Thanks, Sue.
We're running a little bit of short time, so we might save the questions till the end. I'd now like to introduce our dear friend Julie Anderson from Clarence City Council, our first age-friendly community, WHO age-friendly community in the state, and she's going to talk about Clarence as a member of that and the Our Shared Space project. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Ros. And hello, everyone. I think that I'm able to share my screen. Yes. Can everybody see that? Great. I'd like to thank COTA. I really love working with COTA and everyone in the team. And hello to all my fellow community development workers that may be listening. Gary, I'd love to visit you up at the West Coast. That would be really fantastic. It's really fascinating to hear what you're achieving up there in a really short space of time. And thank you to Lyndon for the shout out to how undervalued myself and my colleagues in community development around Tasmania are. I totally agree. So as I've got my presentation here, and Roz is actually helping me because I haven't been able to bring it up on my screen. We might just flick to the next slide, if that's okay, Roz. As Gary said, it's really important to have a place-based approach. And for those of you that might not know Clarence, we're actually the second largest city outside of Launceston in the whole of Tasmania. We are almost approaching 57,000 people, and we're very diverse geographically and socially. And out of that nearly 57,000 people, we are up there when you look at the statistics that both Roz and also Lyndon showed, that nearly 14,000 people are aged over 65. So that's nearly 25%. But more important, I think, is that around 28,000 people in the city of Clarence which is half of our population, are over 45 plus. And I think that's a really interesting group to be concentrating on. And because they're the people that are still in the workforce, and they're the people that are aging alongside everybody else, but in a different way. And even though we have population growth happening here in Clarence, it's still the age group 45 and over that is growing the most. So just the next slide, thanks, Roz. It's been an interesting journey to become the first World Health Organization global network of age-friendly cities and communities member. It's a bit of a mouthful. And this snapshot diagram shows that as the first community development officer here in council, I was employed in 2004. So I've actually been around for 16 years this year. That's I think that's quite an achievement. But what is really fantastic about COTA's Liveable Communities Toolkit is that those 5 steps that are outlined in the toolkit about how to become a livable community, as Roz said, it's really number 1 around assessing with the community. That is the most important, and that was really happening way before I started. A good 2 years before I started, back in 2002, there was a local action group, the Seniors Action Group of Eastern Shore, and there are still people that are still connecting with council that I'm still working with, who are fantastic drivers and champions, and they really lobbied the local council here to not just say, how about we have a community development officer position, but also to have that focus on age-friendly communities and livable communities. So in a way, a focus on positive ageing or age inclusiveness very much came from the community. And as such, a bit groundbreaking, because the first positive ageing plan that was developed with the community really paved the way for other key and critical plans that have come since then, such as Council's Health and Wellbeing Plan and a whole suite of other plans as well. You'll see that it's not a quick trip, and it's really important, as Gary said, you need to be place-based. So you need to have the community involvement, and you really need to develop with the community what's important for your particular community. So what Gary is doing, for example, in the West Coast, that's really fantastic, is obviously some of those things aren't applicable here, and vice versa. Working with the community, and as Lyndon said, the cultural strength of older people is absolutely critical. And I really feel that that's set a fantastic foundation for that not a quick trip that I've sort of outlined on that diagram now. We're in our third plan. So we currently have our age-friendly Clarence plan. And every step of the way, we've just built on that really solid foundation from the community and capturing their desires, their intent, working with them over quite a number of years before we put pen to paper, really listening to the community and valuing their input. At the same time, it's given the organisation here and the elected members in council a really great base to develop their champions as well. We were really, really lucky in that our current mayor, Alderman Doug Chipman, was one of the first chairs of the then Positive Ageing Advisory Committee, and that has set us up in a really good position to, right from the start, work collaboratively with community and with elected members and with partnership organisations. We're consistently evaluating, setting new goals and practical outcomes. And in 2014, we actually felt ready to join the network, and that was based on one of our community members who said, "I think we're ready, Julie, and I think we should be discussing with our council about doing that." And that has given us runs on the board, I think, to continue on with the work that we've done. Just the next slide, thanks, Roz. What that's meant to council has been quite significant. We have developed a holistic approach and also a holistic commitment to developing policy that's meaningful from and with the community. And we've developed practices and programs that, that connect together. And we've also had great benefits in being connected to what's going on around the world. And Alexandra Kalache, who some of you may know, is a bit like the godfather of the World Health Organization in developing age-friendly principles. And we've met him several times, and he's come to Tasmania as well. And he indicated to us that there are really 5 factors to prospering and progressing well in this space, and that is having government support. And we think that we've been really really lucky and privileged to have that government support, particularly at a council level, but also through the state government and of course our partnerships as well. We've community engagement, that's the next factor to prosper well. And the third one is having resources, and that's public and private. We started off with a 0 budget, and as many of us in community development know, that we can operate very well on a 0 budget, but we have been able to ask for resources towards practices and towards programs, and sometimes those resources are very little, but what the outcomes that they receive are quite enormous. Indicators of success, that's one of the things that we have highlighted in our current plan that we can improve on, and council has actually allocated a small amount of money for us to work on a project that is looking at those indicators of success. And the other thing is academic support. And we're definitely improving on that. We've got lots of partnerships now with UTAS and other educational institutions. Just the next slide, thanks, Roz. Out of that, we've developed a number of guiding principles. Obviously, to collaborate, community governance and leadership, we're all about bottom up, top down, strong partnerships, and remembering that your greatest resource is your community, and of course, continuous improvement. And the next slide, thanks. So looking at what makes a livable community, on the left-hand side there, you'll see those 8 domains that are in the toolkit. And on the right-hand side, I've just listed some examples of projects and things we're working on, and I'm happy to talk about any of those later, but the one that I just wanted to highlight was our shared space around respect and social inclusion. So if we flick ahead a couple of slides, thanks Ros. Our Shared Space is a really fantastic program that we developed with our Youth Network Advisory Group and together with our Positive Ageing Advisory Committee, so it comes from the community. And as Ros mentioned earlier, growing old is not always reflected in a positive way. So this project is focused on ageism and bringing all ages in the community together. Just the next slide, thanks. So all of these pictures are real, from real people, from activities, and bringing generations together can be quite challenging. I know that with my teenage children, when they ask me something and I give an answer, and it's all very confusing. But it's actually been a really fantastic project, and the aim is to break down the barriers around ageism and focusing on different activities to do that. So the next slide, thanks. The process has been very much one of cooperation, compromise, communication, and full of great challenges. Compromise has been the biggest one. There's been some full-on fights in planning meetings between younger people and older people about the way things should go down. But luckily, they're a fantastic group of people, and they've always been able to compromise and work through issues. And that has led to, next one, thanks Ros. Some really great small activities and interactions. We've had knitting with rulers, and that was something raised by the young people. We've had walks, we've had quiz nights and days, we've had games, croquet, how to use the Wii, all sorts of activities and really fascinating conversations and lifelong connections. So thank you. I think that was a bit rushed through the presentation, but please contact me if you want to know any more about the Our Shared Space program and also the other programs that I've highlighted in the presentation.
Thanks, Julie. That's wonderful. And it's good to see that you're having vigorous debate in those meetings. It's excellent.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, I'd now like to introduce Miranda Wageman from Huon Valley Council, who's going to talk about livable communities in the Huon.
Hello, my name is Miranda. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Oh. Okay, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm meeting with you today, the Malakadi people of the Southeast Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So livable communities. Fitting in and belonging are not the same thing. In fact, fitting in is one of the greatest barriers to belonging. Fitting in is about assessing a situation and becoming who you need to be in order to be accepted. Belonging, on the other hand, doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. That's a quote by Brené Brown, and I'd like to start with that because I think belonging is part of a livable community. So thank you for having me here at this forum and talk about livable communities. So at the Huon Valley Council, it is in our Huon Valley strategic plan to strive for a community that embraces well-being, care for each other, livability and resilience for all. So often these goals are reached through more, I guess, traditional engagements such as lifestyle, nutrition, workshops and events that promote connection and inclusion. But I think what we're very lucky with at the Huon Valley Council as well is that we use the arts to promote well-being. So I'm the Arts and Culture Officer for Council, and so I'll be talking more about the more creative ways we are using to make our community more connected, happier and more resilient. So I'll be talking about two projects, very briefly about the Huon Beings project, but also about Harmony Week and Faces of the Huon. So I did want to make a mention of the Human Beings Project, which is an ongoing project. And this is led by our filmmaker that we are also lucky to have on staff, which is Mick Lowenstein. And over the past year or so, he has been talking with residents within the valley. So about all sorts of different aspects, what creates a sense of belonging, what connects people to the valley and the landscape. Even if it doesn't directly come up, livability is implied. For example, connection with others, working together, backing each other up. For example, when we had the fires here last year, a lot of people talked about how connected they felt to others and how important it was to have a sense of community and that there was a willingness for people to help each other out. So a lot of our creative projects are aimed at people being able to tell their story and what connects them to the valley and other people in the valley. So in the Huon Valley, we have a really diverse population. People have come from all over the world and Australia to call the Huon Valley their home. We don't fool ourselves that there isn't sometimes discord and disagreements within the community, but we are very much striving to give people a voice, and really their voice is what we're very interested in capturing. We want people to tell their stories in their own words so that we can also address any unreal othering. And by unreal othering, I mean that people tend to create a scapegoat, and it's easy to do if you don't understand them or you don't want to understand them. So, and we reckon this happens from a place of fear and a lack of knowledge of cultures or people that come from different areas. So what we're trying to do with our creative projects is to build a bridge on which we can all find a shared humanity and all the things that link us together. Harmony Week celebrates the diversity within communities. It's an Australia-wide event, and quite often this is celebrated through sports events and food events, but we wanted to approach it differently this year, and so make it more intimate and more personal. So we selected 6 people from very diverse backgrounds who have called the Huon Valley their home, and to see if we could actually find a common thread. And to take this even further, we really wanted to include all ages as well. So Harmony, it's not just about different cultures, but it's also about the intergenerational connectivity and basically everyone who lives in our valley. So the process of our project was that we interviewed these people, and then portrait photos were taken in a setting of their preference, and quite often it was something that felt really significant to them. So a benefit of this was that it allowed people to feel more relaxed about the process and to show them in the best possible light, and people really did look very relaxed. So we asked each of these people what made the Huon Valley home to them, what diversity meant, and what inclusion and belonging meant to them. So invariably, the most poignant and profound comments were made that were instrumental in highlighting the humanity in all of us. And quite often the thread was really that people just wanted to be kind and wanted to connect with each other, regardless of where they were from, how old they were, what their background was, and all of that. So the outcome of this project was 6 large portraits with individual quotes, which were displayed on a highly visible public wall along the main street in Huonville. And this was followed up with an Instagram campaign with further photos and further quotes from the people involved. So we are also planning a tour of the valley with these posters as we're building a mobile art gallery at the moment, so that we can actually take the arts and take stuff to the people, especially in the further more remote regions. Yeah. So it might seem a little strange to highlight livability of a place through creativity, but we found that through using people's own words, we created an environment that resonated with people throughout the community. So everyone knows someone here, so people would recognize somebody, at least one of the 6 people, and then comment on that. You know, we observed that people started looking at all the other posters too, and it just created created it seemed to create an open and safe space for people to be able to express themselves in their own words. And I guess one of the other things was, this is the first time we did a project like this, and there was no vandalism, which was one thing we were worried about. And people really did seem to notice and stop and read and talk to each other, which I thought was a really beautiful outcome of this project. I'd like to finish with a quote too. It is said that diversity is having a seat at the table, inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having that voice be heard. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to actually connect people and connect with people through creating a space of safety and respect, where everyone can have an opinion. Even if it clashes, it doesn't matter, as long as we can hear each other and be there for each other. So I'll just go through the posters that we had. So the first person that we interviewed was a local Aboriginal elder, Rodney Dillon, and the things that he came out with were so profound and so touching. It was actually hard to find a quote out of what he said. But one of the things was, I think that harmony is about understanding and respecting that some people have come from very similar circumstances and that they were treated badly in their country. That's why they're here in a better place, and it's a better place to have them here. We had the late Dr. Jeeves. We were very lucky to be able to interview him. He's passed away just a few weeks ago. And again, he is very much a senior and a very well-respected member of society here. And one of the wonderful things about him was that he was very much interconnected with youth. So his quote was, "The young people, I think, have a great potential, greater perhaps than we have. If anything, they may be more adaptive to change than previous generations." Sofia and Martino, they are a young Italian couple who have settled in the Huon Valley and started their own food business. So they're running a restaurant. And I guess it's really lovely that their bit of culture of sharing food is being translated into the Huon Valley. So their sense of inclusion was about, we're trying to connect all the people who produce good things in the valley and bring them together here so that they create beautiful food and then share it with the community that way. Lisa Duggan was a lady from the Philippines. She was a master chef back in the Philippines and actually on TV. And when we had our interview with her, we were given the most amazing food, which was a wonderful added bonus. But she had this beautiful quote where she said, "You can only live in harmony if you love people. Even if you can see bad things in their life, you can embrace them." Then we had Judy and Ash, and they were, again, it was like a beautiful love story. So Ash came here apple picking, and Judy was working in the admin side in the apple picking place, and they met and they fell in love, and through all sorts of hardships they ended up being able to get married and settle in the Huron Valley. I think the beautiful thing about them was that Ash is Hindu and Judy is Christian. But when they met each other, they just saw the goodness in each other, and that was what was important. So their quote was, "We both have the same belief, that it's not what religion you are, it's how you treat people." And then finally, we had Donovan, who has come from Poland through Switzerland to the Huon Valley. And his quote was, "There's a huge potential within this community because as with the fires, you can see people come together and help each other. And then it doesn't really matter what background you have or what kind of political view you have." Yeah, I totally feel part of it. So there you go, you know, everyone has got something similar to say, and we can say it in their own words and share it with the community. So yeah, that's all for me. The projects are online, or if you have any other questions about how we use creativity and creative projects to connect people together, please feel free to talk to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Miranda. What a wonderful project. Look, I've follow you on Instagram now, and really beautiful, beautiful images, and I think it goes to the power of storytelling.
Yes.
And that storytelling can create change, which I think is something that Scott Rankin spoke about recently when I was on Friday Forum with him, and I think that is an important consideration. We're up to our final speaker now, Heidi Willard from Central Coast Council, and Heidi's going to talk to us about dementia-friendly Central Coast, which is another important component about livable communities. Heidi.
Thanks, Sue. Can everybody see that screen?
Yep.
Great. Aligned to the Council's Central Coast, beg my pardon, aligned to the Central Coast Council's social planning framework, the Dementia Friendly Central Coast project started in 2017 and has been supported by a Liveable Communities grant and a Tasmanian Communities Fund grant. The project has used collective processes to bring together many stakeholders, including people living with dementia, carers, service providers, local government, community groups, community representatives and volunteers. Two initiatives of the Dementia Friendly Central Coast project that will be presented today are the Connect Cafe and Business Inclusion Training. First up though is a quick tour of the Central Coast Council's social planning framework. The social planning framework is a whole of council approach to make a positive difference to the health and well-being of the Central Coast community. The framework guides development of new plans and strategies for the council to enable health and well-being to be included in council processes and decision-making. The social planning framework helps to create alignment and consistency for council's plans and strategies. The social planning framework places the Central Coast community's vision at the centre. Around the outer circle, the council's strategic plan, who determinants of health, and the Healthy Tasmania strategic plan are linked to the inner segments of the model that represent our place-based needs. Around the centre of the model are the priority areas for action. One or more of these needs to be considered in the action plans of strategic council documents. The Dementia Friendly Central Coast project is aligned to the social planning framework priority action areas of healthy, engaged, included and secure. Dementia is one of the fastest growing conditions in Australia. Statewide, Tasmania's dementia population is expected to grow to more than 20,600 by 2056, with the fastest growth predicted over the next 2 decades. In 2027, it's estimated that 579 residents of Central Coast will be living with dementia. And by the year 2037, this number is projected to be 795. When we were developing the framework, we conducted a local survey. The survey found that 75% of respondents would like to feel supported in their community if they received a dementia diagnosis. The Dementia Friendly project is working towards creating Central Coast as a place where people living with dementia are supported to live a high quality of life with meaning, purpose and value. One of the key initiatives designed by the working group is the Connect Cafe. The weekly cafe creates a space where people can come together while having a laugh and a cuppa. The cafe started in 2018 and is now in hiatus due to COVID-19. The cafe improves inclusion by reducing stigma associated with dementia that often results in social isolation. It facilitates a supportive and accessible space for people to share their dementia journey. The Connect Cafe has been well received by cafe patrons and the community. The cafe often hosts music events such as performances by Slipstream Circus. Creative Wellbeing facilitated a series of card making and other creative art projects. The consultants have experience in working with groups with specific needs. Yarning is a bit of fun and it can bring back memories of old. Music is an important part of the cafe, and here is a very special choir. The pianist is 90 years old. It's wonderful when younger people interact with the cafe patrons. Live music sets the ambience in the room, and it can be a great way to meet the people sitting next to you and to have a chat. Visits by Delta dog teams are special. Delta dogs have a gift knowing who would like to pat a furry new friend. Interesting activities are shared by young and old. Occasionally, we are visited by local primary school choir. What a great experience for everyone involved. It's so nice seeing the blokes getting together to have a chat. And our wonderful cafe volunteers. They're a committed group who find camaraderie together and joy in assisting cafe patrons. The first Dementia Inclusion Training session hosted by Tasmanian Health Services and Council happened in April 2019 and was attended by around 30 people. These were made up of local business and community group representatives. The second session was held in November 2019 and was attended by around 20 people. This is a short video from Alzheimer's WA, who are happy to share their resources for the inclusion training in the hope that it might help to create change in other communities.
We're not picking up the sound on that, Heidi. We might circulate that afterwards, perhaps.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
The training included a workshop where businesses and groups designed their own strategies to implement in order to become more inclusive to people living with dementia and their carers. That is, by applying learning from the training, local businesses themselves identified things that they could do that would make their business more inclusive and accessible for people living with dementia and their carers. Participants also completed an online dementia quiz before and after the training that helps with evaluation. This is Renaissance Cafe in Penguin and their dementia-friendly accreditation. Accredited businesses receive dementia-friendly welcome mat, badges for staff, and a window decal or sticker. Dementia-friendly strategies implemented at Renaissance Cafe included slow talking and improved listening when needed. Harcourt's Real Estate provide excellent front of house service and actively approach and speak to people who enter the accessible premises. Scissor Tricks already have several customers who are living with dementia and are mindful of opening the door and assisting people when needed. The dementia-friendly window decal at Scissor Tricks is on the entrance door. St Vincent's de Paul in Ulverston now provides seating in their shop, particularly useful if people become disorientated while shopping in the busy store. View Real Estate have an accessible store and provide excellent front of house operations. Ongoing strategies of listening and speaking clearly is being practiced and seating has been made available. And that's it.
Thanks,
everyone.
Heidi. That's wonderful. Often very simple things to do, but can make a real difference for people living with dementia in the community and their carers. So we haven't got any questions posted in the Q&A, but if you want to add anything quickly in, we can just have a couple of minutes if you wanted to ask a question of any of the panelists. No? Okay, what we might do, Roz, has just pointed out that if you do have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us at COTA and we can point you in the direction of the panelists so that we can respond to it later. We are running a little bit over time, but I do hope that you've enjoyed some of the exciting things that are happening around the state. As our presenters mentioned on several occasions, they're very place-based, and I think that's one of the keys of the livable community approach, is that taking the time to really listen to your communities and being able to put very localized solutions into communities, I think is a really important component. Really great presentations today. I think we've all got some ideas and we might see them popping up in other council areas around the state. And of course, remember that it doesn't necessarily need to be council driven as well. There's great merit in people from the community coming up with ideas. And as Lyndon said, going to have a chat to councils and working together to making things happen. My thanks again, once again to the state government for their support in the work that we do at COTA and ensuring that we can provide some tools and resources to make Tasmania a more livable community in general. And it's as I mentioned before, more needed now than ever again. And I would encourage you to look at the toolkit and see how you can make it work in your community, particularly when we're entering into hopefully a recovery phase. I think we can all learn from the resources there. So thank you, everyone. We'll wrap up now, and I hope to see you all again, if not online, but in person shortly. Bye-bye, everyone. And thank you to all our wonderful presenters once again. Thank you.